Good evening, brethren, and welcome again to the 12th installment of the Grandmaster's Q&A. I'm your host, Dan Hotchkiss, and it's certainly my pleasure again to host this and mediate the discussion this evening. And this evening, we're going to talk about our town hall meeting agendas. For those of you who have not yet had an opportunity to visit a town hall, we do have a couple left, but this evening we're going to review the items that we've been discussing in there. And that would include a charity fund drive update by our Deputy Grandmaster, Right Worshipful Brother David Collins, a discussion regarding the proposed per capita increase by our Grand Treasurer, Right Worshipful Brother James Lawrence, a review of building associations and some of the related filing requirements by our Junior Grand Warden, Right Worshipful Brother Scott Borthwick, who will then also talk about our Special Ladies program. And then we're going to get to know our incoming Grandmaster, Right Worshipful Brother David Collins, a little bit, and he'll talk a little bit about himself and some of his plans for the evening. Brethren, as I mentioned, this is the 12th installment. Hard to believe we've been doing this for a year at this point in time. I certainly would like to personally thank our Grandmaster for his guidance and his leadership during this difficult time. And his communications team for coming up with the idea of having these Q&As. We certainly hope you've found them beneficial and informative. And it's been a great tool for us to be able to keep in touch with each of you and to provide hopefully important information, not only about what was happening during the pandemic, but also about Masonry here in New Hampshire. So without further ado, brethren, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you the most worshipful Grandmaster of the most worshipful Grand Lodge of the ancient and honorable fraternity of free and accepted Masons of the state of New Hampshire, most worshipful brother Kenneth Ansel Clay Jr. Most worshipful.
Thank you very much, Dan. Fantastic job. You're a real leader with these Q&As, and I appreciate all that you do for the craft. Good evening, brethren. It's great to be with you. I sure hope you were able to get outside and spend a bit of time out enjoying the beauties of nature. It was an absolutely fantastic day out there. And my understanding is we've got more good days ahead. So please, by all means, take advantage of that. Brethren, we have been getting really good feedback. We've now been through 6 town halls thus far this year. And that's 2 more than what we were able to accomplish last year. If you remember last year, we were about halfway through our town hall season when the pandemic struck and we had to shut things down. But, you know, as a result of that, we've actually learned a lot. And this tool being one of them. We didn't have anything like this time last year. But because of the communications team, their ingenuity, they were able to bring technology such as this into the forefront, which is terrific. Brethren, there's some great things happening throughout our jurisdiction. Yesterday, I had the great honor and pleasure of attending a fellow craft workshop that was held at Blazing Star Eureka Lodge in Concord. We had about 30 brethren present. The EdCom team, their leadership and members of EdCom did an absolutely fantastic job with the content and delivery of that content. I know that there are Master Masons being raised in this state. I see where Worshipful Brother Bartasak is on here from Humane Lodge, and they've been very active, performing degrees. Good things are happening in Freemasonry, and I have all the confidence in the world that as people are getting the vaccines and the weather is turning warmer, that is nothing but good for our beloved craft. So I'm going to turn it now back to Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss to continue with this evening's program.
Thank you very much, most worshipful. I appreciate your words of wisdom and inspiration. Brethren, I now have the pleasure of introducing to you our Deputy Grandmaster, Right Worshipful Brother David Collins, who will give us an update regarding the charity fund drive. Right Worshipful.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss. Brethren, it's great to be with you this evening. And certainly the things that I'm really pleased to bring you is a report on the charity fund drive. You know, in 2020, a year ago, who would have known that we would have been in this predicament that we are today? Socially distancing, as a term is now coined, being on Zoom meetings, and certainly having really our world kind of turned upside down. Certainly when the charity fund drive is done, the Deputy Grand Master chairs the committee and works with the Grand Master each year to kind of start the charity fund drive. And it normally goes out after Grand Lodge in May. And, last year, there was so many things. The state was shut down. The country was shut down. The world was being shut down. Brethren and their families were being furloughed from work. People were losing their jobs. But other industries were continuing to move forward. And certainly, as it impacted one individual very greatly, others were not as so impacted. So when the Grand Master looked at the charity fund drive last year, and I had a long conversation with him about it, what we decided to do was continue the charity fund drive and know that we're going to reach out to the brethren and simply ask if they're able to give. But most of all, we want to remind brethren, if they're in a financial predicament they find themselves in, that they were not able to contribute, most certainly we didn't want you to, as the Masonic term does, do injury to yourself more than you should. So certainly when the letter went out, that was requested. Brethren, if you're able to give a little something for the charity fund drive this year, great, we thank you. If you're not able to, or if you're in a tougher financial predicament, we ask you not to give anything. There will be times to do it down the road when you're better in a financial place. So brethren, we had the charity fund drive. We sent our mailings out, we did it. And a lot of my theme has been over the last 2 years on the charity fund drives is not for brethren giving large sums of money, like, again, our brethren giving $50, $100, $200, $300, $500 for the charity fund drive. But if every brother just gave a little bit, because, when I started in chairing this committee, I really looked at what we had done on past charity fund drives. And again, we have some nice donations that we always get. But what I was really discouraged at, brethren, was the amount of brothers that were contributing to our charity fund drive each year. I mean, we were averaging around 10 to 11% each year from the charity fund drive. Now, we were raising funds, most certainly. But, again, I'd really pushed for brethren to just look at it. And I remind you here again, right? What's the cost to go get a large coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks? Or go get a meal at McDonald's for one person? $5 gets burnt up pretty quickly. And my brethren, how many times are you doing that in the course of a week, a month, 6 months, a year, and on? And for that reason, I really appeal to the brethren, have been appealing to the brethren to, don't worry when you get that charity fund drive letter. Don't worry about giving $50, $100 or more dollars, unless you can. You know what? Just turn around and give us $5, and we want to make it easy for you to give. So we also realize that brethren today, and many of you, right, you're paying with debit cards and credit cards, and you don't really deal with much in cash anymore. So we needed to make that easy as well. So what we did a couple years ago is we have a PayPal account, and we started making that known that, brethren, if you'd like to contribute to the charity fund drive, we request that in a letter. And if you can, go to the Grand Lodge website, go to PayPal account, and certainly donate whatever you feel comfortable doing, from certainly $1 on. It doesn't matter. It matters that you gave. And brother, I want to thank each one of you, and I know the Grand Master does as well, because the results that we had in the COVID year were actually astounding. And let me share some of those with you. So if I look back 3 years in the charity fund drive in the Grand Lodge, we had about 11% of the brethren contributing. And again, as I talked about, I've been appealing to the brethren to increase those charity funds, to increase the giving. So actually, we saw a nice little uptick in 2019. And I'm here to tell you, brethren, that in 2020, our charity fund drive that ended on December 31st of last year, we actually doubled the amount of brethren giving. So from 11%, we went up to nearly 22% of the brethren giving. And I want to thank each and every one of you that was able to give. But brethren, this is not the end. We always can do more. So I'm certainly going to appeal to you as we move forward, as it's turned over into Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss' capable hands. We're going to keep appealing to you to simply give a little to that charity fund drive. So, certainly with COVID, there was an impact to the charity fund drive in the average amount of the gift. Brethren gave less. We knew that going in. And you know what? Whatever we got for a number was going to be awesome, because you know what? Each one of you took a time to give a small gift to our charity fund drive. Brethren, again, going back 3 years, we actually raised right under $40,000, which was very good for our jurisdiction. We're a small jurisdiction. That's a great amount. We will increase that in 2019. And brethren, I'm here to report to you that in 2020, the charity fund drive, we were only $500 shy of what we raised in the 2019 charity fund drive. So we actually raised, brethren, just shy of $45,000. And I think that's awesome. And I really want to, on behalf of the Grand Master and myself, I want to thank you for being able to contribute and do some of those things for our charity funds. Now, brethren, the big question that you always ask, and you know what you have a right to ask, is what do you do with that money? Where is that money going each year? Well, my brothers, certainly we're always taking part of that we do some annual contributions that we do to support organizations in this state. But as well, we're also trying to increase our charity funds, because the main thing we do with those charity funds, brethren, a lot of what we do with them is to help brethren like you and your special ladies when they get into a financial predicament. You know, my brothers, I'm here to tell you that over the course of a year, each year, we do get requests from brothers who maybe have come to their lodge. The lodge has limited funds. They're not able to give. And what happens is they come to the Grand Lodge and say, are you able to give a little more money? We have a brother who got in a financial predicament. He had a large medical bill that was unexpected. He has a large copay that wasn't covered. He's on a fixed income and he's not able to pay for it. Is there any way you can help? And you know, my brothers, I'm pleased to say each and every year we do that. That's certainly a big part of what we do. Another thing, though, brethren, I want to share with you is some of the wonderful organizations and some of the things we support each year. The first is our scholarships. So certainly, brethren, with the Rainbow Order for Girls, we have a scholarship that we work jointly with the New Hampshire Rainbow Grand Assembly. And we actually each year take money from the charity fund drive and use that to fund scholarships for those young ladies in Rainbow and to continue their efforts to educate themselves, certainly to advance themselves and get a better job. We also have Grand Lodge scholarships. And my brothers, I'm here to tell you, if you have any family members, your children, your grandchildren that are certainly of college age and are looking for some scholarship money to help offset the expensive cost of higher education, please reach out to the Grand Lodge office. They have applications. The application period is still open and they're still accepting applications. Certainly each year we give a nice array of gifts. And again, my brothers, when we look at these scholarships, we're not giving $100, $200 scholarships. We're giving $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 scholarships. Scholarships that make a little bit of a difference. We don't have huge funds to draw from, but we certainly want to make something that makes a difference in those young people so that we'll certainly help them with higher education. We also support our youth organizations, DMLA. We're certainly a large supporter of DMLA in New Hampshire and those DMLA chapters because we want to make sure that those young men have an opportunity to grow and certainly become productive individuals of our society. So, well, brethren, one of the older charity things that we give to each year that we've done for over 30 years now, I don't have the exact date, but I was looking back and I was quite surprised myself recently when I was looking at that, is the New Hampshire DARE program, which is actually operated under the auspices of the New Hampshire State Police. They have a coordinator that handles that. And each and every year, my brothers, I'm here to tell you that we support those programs. You know, some of you may say, yeah, you know, that's wonderful, but I don't see DARE as much of a presence as they used to be. Brethren, feel free to go and look at the website. There is over 25 communities in this state now that still have active DARE officers, and they're actively working with the youth in their communities. You know, they work with the 4th grade and 5th graders in the communities. They have a program certainly about drug abuse resistance awareness, but also about bullying in schools and helping those young children deal with the peer pressures in their school and building a relationship with law enforcement so they're not afraid of what law enforcement is there to help them. So I'm also here to tell you that during COVID was a challenging time. A lot of what they do in a normal time is they have these nice workbooks that they work through with the young children. They were able to pivot this past year with COVID, like many of us did with virtual, and they were able to do virtual workbooks. So the children were able to get something out of that. The programs were well attended. And I'm here to report those programs are thriving very well throughout the state. And certainly we're proud to be supporting of that. As well, my brothers, we also give to Evergreen Place, which is the former New Hampshire Masonic Home, now New Hampshire Masonic Care. And you know, my brothers, when that was founded, it was founded in a different time back in the early 1900s. It was founded in a time when healthcare and health costs were much different. Social Security didn't exist back then. People literally became paupers of the county to do that. Over time, like everything else in healthcare, it's changed. And certainly there's ever increasing costs with healthcare. The Evergreen Place now is an assisted living facility. And it's a very well-used facility in Manchester. And, a lot of what they do is they actually provide Medicare, Medicaid beds to people that are in tougher financial situations. And the money that we contribute annually to Evergreen Place helps to support those elderly, those people in need, and do what we do as Masons, certainly to help others. But as well, brethren, with the Grand Master and myself and the other Grand Lodge line officers, we've been talking for the last couple of years. We have some wonderful charities we support, but maybe it's time to get behind another one or two major charities in this state that the brethren of this state can get behind. Maybe the suggestion is maybe for the next 5 years or so, we pick a time frame where we actually support this organization from fundraise through our charity fund drive. Now, my brothers, I'm here to let you know that certainly we're open to any suggestions you may have. We're simply looking for something that really covers on a more statewide basis. Maybe they don't get in every corner of the state, but something that well covers the state. A couple of suggestions we have. And again, these are not something that are decided on, it's just suggestions. One of them is the New Hampshire Food Bank. As many of you are aware, my brothers, certainly in your own communities, you have local food pantries, and in this time of COVID, there's been a real need for that. As well, I'm here to share with you, New Hampshire Food Bank is the organization statewide that supports that. Maybe that's something that we can get behind financially and look as one of our main charities for the coming year. Another suggestion is maybe up at Dartmouth Hitchcock, you certainly have David House, the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth. They do a lot of wonderful things for neonatal care, and they do them at reduced cost. They provide services to the families really at no cost. Maybe that's something we could get behind. There's certainly others, my brothers. So if you have an idea of what you'd like to see us get behind for a charity, let's certainly reach out to the Grand Lodge office, certainly put together a short paragraph of what you would like to see us do. I will personally get back to you. And then when we get to Grand Lodge in May, we'll have an open discussion about that. And I'll bring you up the things for suggestion, and we can have a conversation about which one of those charities we need to get behind and maybe focus on certainly some of our charitable efforts and help those charities that can really make a difference in our state and our jurisdiction. Most of all, brethren, I'm here to just say once again, thank you for all you do for the Charity Fund Drive. Thank you for giving some of your hard-earned dollars to help those brethren, the youth, the elderly, and those organizations that we support in this jurisdiction that certainly make it a better place to give. Because we as Masons, we take an oath certainly to help others as they've helped us. With that, I'll turn it, if there's no questions, I'll turn it back over to Right Worshipful Brother Dan Hotchkiss. Dan?
Thank you, Right Worshipful Collins. I don't see any questions currently, and I certainly look forward to continuing the great work that you've done with our Masonic Charity Fund Drive and how we support and help not only our lodges, but our community. And certainly look forward to moving that forward. And thank you very much for the great work. And brethren, thank you for the contributions you've made to our Charity Fund Drive, because without that, we could not do the great work that we have the opportunity to do. So once again, I'm just reiterating what Brother Collins said. We thank you very much for all your contributions. Brother, just as a reminder. Oh, right.
I did see one question pop up as you were talking, sorry, from Dave Rich. Are we helping Evergreen Place repair their bus and the recent vandalism? I can tell you, I would suspect if it's vandalism, they stole the catalytic converter. My suspicion would be that their insurance company would certainly take care of that and then pay for it as any vandalism on a vehicle. It's very sad that Evergreen Place's catalytic converter was stolen right off their bus, right in their parking lot. So I believe that that was handled that way. But certainly, if they were in need, we'd certainly do something to help them. So,
yep. And I can actually answer that question directly. They have applied for and filed their claim with their insurance company. So that should be handled through those proper channels. But thank you very much, Brother Rich, for that question. Brethren, as a reminder, please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we move forward. If we have them, and I will make sure that they get brought up to the appropriate individual, either during their presentation or immediately following, so that those can be answered. And with that, brethren, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you our Grand Treasurer, Right Worshipful Brother James Lawrence, who's going to provide an overview of the proposed per capita increase that was proposed at our last semi-annual communication in November. Right Worshipful.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss. As many of you know, at the last annual / semi-annual communication, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I proposed a 3.5% increase to the per capita. Now, before I get into the details of how and why that proposal came about, I want to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. Some of you may recall almost a decade ago when the then Grand Treasurer, Right Worshipful Daniel Hotchkiss, toured this jurisdiction and asked for, at the time, what was a very large one-time per capita increase. As a matter of fact, it was a $20 increase and almost doubled the per capita in this jurisdiction. And a lot of the discussion at that time centered around how large this increase was, and it wasn't certain that that proposal was actually going to pass. Fortunately, it did pass. And now, having the benefit of hindsight, we are able to look back and analyze it and determine exactly how that $20 per capita increase impacted the financial resources of your Grand Lodge. And it was absolutely necessary. Now, how did we get to that point? We got to that point because we went for a long period of time where the proper analysis was not done so that we could make smaller, more incremental increases to our per capita to not only keep pace with the specter of inflation, but to make sure that we were addressing the financial needs of your Grand Lodge. Now, we'll fast forward to present day. I recently did an hour-long Q&A session just for this particular topic. And I really appreciate the brethren who participated. We had pretty decent participation in that particular Q&A. And although I can't go into as much detail now as I went into at that session, I'll try and do my best to highlight the high notes of why we are asking for this particular per capita increase now. Now, unlike the last time that we asked for $20, we have had the time to actually do some of the analysis, and we're trying to be a little bit more proactive. And one of the discussions that came out of that large per capita increase was maybe we ought to look at doing more frequent, smaller, and incremental increases to the per capita to give brethren the opportunity to plan for these increases and also to put as little burden on the brothers in this jurisdiction as we possibly can, at the same time maintaining the financial resources that we need to protect our very precious Grand Lodge endowment. Now, if you were able to see that dedicated Q&A, I'm going to highlight two things that I was able to show graphically there. One is the fact that this jurisdiction has been very judicious in its spending over the past 10 years. As a matter of fact, if you look at our overall expenditures for the Grand Lodge office, it has been relatively flat over the past 10 years. It gradually increased slightly until the year 2016, but since 2016, it has steadily declined to our present date. And as a matter of fact, if you look, we are currently spending approximately the same exact amount for our Grand Lodge expenditures as we did 10 years ago. So that actually is the result, and your Grand Lodge line officers, as well as your Grand Lodge Finance Committee, has been very effective at identifying efficiencies and keeping costs under control. So for that piece of it, I'm very thankful. The other thing that I went into some detail into is the effects of, if we do pass this per capita increase, what that would mean to our receipts for annual per capita, and also what it would look like if we did not pass this for the next 10 years. Fortunately, we have been able to control spending, as I said before, but unfortunately, there's something that is troubling our financial situation actually a little bit more than inflation and rising costs, and that is the specter of declining membership. This jurisdiction on average loses approximately 170 Masons a year. And over the past decade, the financial hit that our Grand Lodge has taken is actually in the six figures. So although we've been able to absorb the past decade of decreased per capita revenues by making prudent cuts to spending, it is not wise to think that we can continue to do that indefinitely. Unfortunately, although the declining membership number is decreasing, it does appear that we will continue to lose more members than we raise in this jurisdiction, at least for the next several years. And this is primarily due to the unfortunate death of a member. We also have members who are being suspended for non-payment of dues. There are a small number of members that are demitting, but that number traditionally has been much higher than the number of Masons that we're able to raise year to year. So 3.5%, that's what we're asking for. What does that mean? That means that in the year 2022, if this proposal were to pass, the per capita would increase by $1.58 in 2022. It would continue to increase by less than $2 a year for the next decade. And in terms of keeping us on par with what our per capita revenues are, it wouldn't completely keep us level or on par with what we're receiving currently, but it would come very close. And over the next decade, it would stave off not only most of the impact of declining membership, but also some of the sting of rising costs due to inflation. If you look at the other curve, if we were to do nothing, basically that number decreases very rapidly as we lose members each year, and unfortunately would put us in a situation where we become very rapidly unsustainable. The bottom line is, as we've toured our jurisdiction and gone to multiple town hall meetings so far, we have had some very lively discussions, and many brethren have brought forward a number of very good points and raised some very valid concerns and maybe some potential alternatives to the solution. Although we acknowledge that there may be multiple ways to skin this cat, there may be different ways that we can address this very real and specific issue that we have pertaining to our per capita currently. But what I think most brethren agree on is that we do have a requirement, and we do have to do something here shortly to make sure that we are preserving the resources, the precious resources that the brethren who have come before us in this jurisdiction, that have left to us to care for, to leave to future Masons in this jurisdiction in perpetuity. So at this point in time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open it up to any questions that any of the brethren may have at this time, so that we can answer them in reference to the per capita increase that's been proposed.
Right, Worshipful Lawrence, I see one question from Brother Bo Jones. I know we don't recruit, but is there anything we can do as Masons that could possibly bring about new members?
Okay, that is an excellent question. And it is something that the Grand Line has been working very diligently since this issue has been since this issue has come up. I know the Deputy Grand Master will talk a little bit later about some of the initiatives that he plans on implementing in order to help not only slow down the decrease the amount of members that we lose each year, but also to help bring some brethren that have left the jurisdiction back. I also want to add that the Grand Line has worked considerably on a number of initiatives, including the Not Just a Man, a Mason initiative sponsored by Scottish Rite. Unfortunately, because of what COVID-19 has done to impact us over the past year, it has been difficult to unveil or move forward with any of those. But I'm quite sure the Deputy Grand Master or the Grand Master elect will be able to shed some light on some of the initiatives that he plans on implementing soon. Okay. It looks like Brother Ryan Flynn has more of a comment. Make your lodge meetings something that can't be missed. That's the only way. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, more interesting meetings definitely would help with membership. And I don't believe I see any other questions, which means that you all must have gone to the previous 6 town hall meetings and got all of your questions answered. So I thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Right Worshipful Hotchkiss at this time.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Lawrence. I know how difficult the job that is, having sat in that seat previously. And it's never easy to ask for money. And brethren, I can tell you that a grand treasurer never wants to ask for money if we don't have to. But certainly this is a necessary analysis, and look forward to further discussion.
Right, there is one question that just popped in. Do you mind if I answer that real quick?
Nope, not at all. I was just going to move that to you, actually.
Okay, so it seems like there's another question here from Brother Gray. Is there any reason that it has to be a forever increase? I would be more supportive to a 5-year increase. So here's the answer. When we did the analysis, we came up with a 3.5% increase. And what that was designed to do was, despite decreasing membership of a certain number, that it would keep us close to on par, not on par with where we are in terms of per capita receipts out beyond a decade. So in other words, if this increase passes and things stay the way that they are, this increase will only keep us close to the level of per capita revenues that we're currently getting now, 10 years from now. I would like to be an optimist and say that what the Deputy Grand Master is going to propose and other initiatives that are to come forward will turn this trend around, and we will start to increase membership, thereby eliminating a lot of the financial woes that we are now suffering under and predicting. And if that is the case, I would be, for one, if I'm still around, would be willing to go forward in Grand Lodge at that time and propose a change to the per capita, maybe ending this increase. And I might add that any member of our jurisdiction could go to Grand Lodge and propose such a constitutional change at any Grand Lodge session. But unfortunately, if we look at the most realistic situation that we're facing, which is probably the next 10 years, we'll probably lose some members. This very small increase, only 3.5%, is going to be necessary to keep our per capita receipts at a level that we can sustain Grand Lodge. And I might add, it's not going to be an easy fix, because not only do we need to keep that going, but we're going to have to continue to find more efficiencies and cut spending at the same time. So we've got a tall order to deal with. And I think that we're going to hit it with everything we've got, trying to increase membership, trying to cut spending, trying to be more efficient. But it's going to take all of these things working collectively to make this work. Okay, I got another question that came in. It says, do taxes or per capitas ever decrease? And the answer is, historically, they don't, just because of the fact that, you know, the cost of goods and services tends to go up in general. However, it is possible for the Grand Lodge to actually do that. You can decrease it. So that is a possible thing. And it's up to the brethren to do that at that particular time. Okay, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss, I don't think there's any other questions. I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks again, Right Worshipful. Brethren, thank you very much for your questions. And certainly if you think of others as we progress with the remainder of the Q&A, please don't hesitate to add them, and we'll come back to Right Worshipful Brother Lawrence or any of the other presenters as we need to move forward. So thank you very much for those questions. And now, brethren, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you our junior Grand Warden, Right Worshipful Brother Scott Borthwick, who has become our local expert on building associations and some of the tax issues surrounding them. Right Worshipful.
Thank you, Right Worshipful. Everybody hear me okay? Well,
Yes, we're good.
okay. All right. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is your 2020 nonprofit report that all associations are supposed to file every 5-year period. This was sent out last fall and was due by December 31st. So any lodges with associations, make sure that they have filed this report. You do have an extension till April 1st, but it is important to get this done because if you lose your nonprofit status in the state, you may lose any abatements that you get from the town. So that's the first. Second thing is we discovered the Grand Secretary discovered in the office a form that was a letter that was sent out by past most Worshipful Grandmaster John Martin at the time he was Grand Secretary, and in it was stated 1998. And in 1998, there's a tax laws change, and that building associations no longer fall under the 501c10 classification. They had to file as a 501c2, and this letter was requesting lodges to submit applications to be listed under a mass filing under the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire. All but 8 lodges did this, and because of the town hall meetings, I discovered that some of them had other reasons why they did not, and some did late. So anyways, it's important that lodges know what their tax filing is. And lastly, on building associations, just a friendly reminder that it is tax season, and your 990s, both the lodge and the associations, are due. Any questions on building associations?
Right Worshipful Borthwick, I do not see any questions regarding building associations, but certainly if some do arise, I'll let you know. But if you would now like to talk about the Special Ladies Program, that would be great.
Absolutely. So yes, the Special Ladies Program, the applications have been sent out to the lodges. We are looking forward to hearing from you. So far, we have only received 2 applications, and this is to receive the Revere Bowl. However, we want to hear from all the lodges. We know how tough this last year has been, and we want to know what you've been doing for your special ladies. As you well know, especially senior elder ladies, special ladies have been in homes or in their home and not been able to go out or see family or friends. Hopefully, lodges have been keeping in contact with them. But again, we would like to hear what you're doing, even if you only have 1 special lady or 20. And if you feel you haven't done enough to warrant the Paul Revere Bowl, that doesn't matter. We still want to hear what you have been doing. Last year, we found out a lodge was giving a card to the special lady at the funeral of her husband, and in it, it would have a contact list. So ideas like that come from these reports. So please get them in. The deadline is April 15th. Any questions on that?
Right, Worshipful, I do not see any questions regarding that, and it seems like you mentioned the appropriate deadline, so I think we're good. Thank you very much for that important information regarding our building associations and our special ladies. Now, brethren, I see a question from Brother Ryan Flynn that I believe our Deputy Grand Master may answer during his discussion regarding some of his forthcoming plans. So I'm going to hold off on specifically answering that question at this point in time, because I do believe that may be addressed by our Deputy Grand Master. Now, brethren, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you Right Worshipful Brother David Collins, who was elected to serve our Grand Lodge as the 118th Grand Master and will be installed in May of this year. Right Worshipful.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss. Brethren, again, good evening. And Brother Hotchkiss, keep me straight. I definitely will answer Brother Flynn's question as I get down into my discussion point. And if I forget to, I apologize, but I know you'll remind me of that as a good moderator. So thank you for that. So, brethren, it's certainly a pleasure to be with you here tonight. 2021 is a pretty special year for me, and I'll tell you why. One thing, I'm turning half a century old later this year. I don't know if that's a special thing, but I think the other thing is, Masonically, 25 years ago, right now, I was actually going through my 3 degrees to become a Mason. And, kind of where I come from, and I thought I'd give you a little background of where I come from, how I chose to become a Mason, and what my journey's been like. So I was born and raised up in Colbert, New Hampshire, up in the North Country, right up where the Canadian border in Vermont and Quebec meet, in the upper Connecticut River Valley. It's a great little town. I grew up in a great little community, and I grew up next to the firehouse. And, when I got through high school, what I wanted to do was, most of all, I wanted to become a fireman. And at that time in my town, just like Freemasonry, you had to be 21 years old to join. Except just as I was getting ready to go in college, they reduced the age to 18. So I joined, and one of my dreams was made. And to this day, I'm still active in the fire department. And it's been a really proud part of my life. Something that I did early on, our fire department did not have an ambulance. It was a separate ambulance squad in town. I took a health class in high school. I thought it was wonderful. So one of my friends decided, hey, let's go take an EMT class. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I did it, and I really found another passion. I've never done it professionally for a full-time career, but helping my community and certainly helping in the fire service and helping the emergency medical services has been a huge part of my life. Early on, spent a lot of time in it, and really for a period, just like Masonry, I got out of it for a little bit, came back to it, and actively involved in a couple departments now in Southern New Hampshire. And I really love what we do as volunteers to help our fellow neighbors in their times of crisis, whether it's a fire, motor vehicle accident, whether they have an injury at the house with a child, somebody has a heart attack. It's just wonderful to be able to do that on a volunteer basis, and that's really been part of it. So my volunteerism has always been something that I'm about and really who I am. When I was a young man, when I very young, I found a great interest in history. I actually became and founded the Historical Society in the town of Colbert, New Hampshire, back when I was just about 20 years old. And I actually, to this day, am still very active with it. I am the president of the Historical Society still. And a lot of my fellow historians have stated to say, I've been with some wonderful people, many who are Brother Masons. And, now, sadly, they're no longer with us. And I sometimes feel like I'm the last man standing. I have a great little group that I work with up there, passionate about history, just like I'm passionate about history from my local town, New Hampshire, Freemasonry. You see me engaged a lot with William Pitt Tavern, and that's why I love history. But really where I came to Masonry was my uncle. I had an uncle who was a very close brother of mine, he was a close brother to my dad. My dad had one brother, and my grandfather, my dad's dad, wasn't alive when I was born. So I looked up to my uncle. He's somebody who I adored. We hunted and fished. I love the outdoors. And it's something I did a lot of, and I did a lot with my uncle. And, when I had thought that when I turned 21, because you had to be 21 to join back then, that I was going to join the lodge, but I didn't for whatever reason or other. I think I was very active in the community. I was active on the fire department. I was kind of busy at the time. So I waited a couple of years, but my the hunting passion that I share with my uncle, we were able to get a moose permit. And that year we got a trophy moose. Back 25 years, just 26 years ago, we got a trophy moose. And I spent a lot of time with him at summer scouting for moose, and the Masonic conversation came up. My uncle was very much old school. He didn't solicit me to become a Freemason or tell me to be. He'd answer my questions openly, and he'd always end it with, if it's something you'd like to do, I'd love to certainly sponsor you into that. Back then in those days, the internet was very new. You couldn't go to libraries and find a lot of books about Freemasonry. So like many other brothers, I joined Freemasonry because of my uncle. My uncle was somebody I respected, I looked up to, and I joined because of my uncle. What I found was when I got ready to take those degrees, there was a brother of mine up in my home lodge, still around today, brother by the name of David Edwin Lewis, Ed Lewis, great friend of mine to this day, great mentor. Early on, as soon as he knew I was wanting to join, he came right up, came right to my office. I'm an insurance agent. And what did he do? He said, looking forward to having you join. We're going to do some really special degrees, and I hope you enjoy it and you get out of it what I have. So I did. So I petitioned, not really knowing. Found out through the petition process I had to be a unanimous ballot. That got me a little bit nervous, but I was balloted upon favorably. And I came into the lodge in January of 1996. And, I had a special group of brethren that were there that night. And it was brethren out of North Star Lodge, because they had a special lodge they put together for a year called Journeyman's Lodge, number 1797. And for 1 year, they actually went out and essentially made brothers Masons just simply in the entered apprentice degree. It was a historic thing they wanted to do to celebrate their bicentennial celebration of their lodge. So that was my first degree. I had a great mentor of mine. I had a brother, Bud Hulse, who was a historian friend, knew him very well. He signed my petition. He followed me right home that night and started mentoring me. And he'd find out what night of the week I wanted to meet with him. I was to be at his house at a certain time. When I got there, we sat down and we started working on the lesson. Those evenings are some of the best recollections I have of Freemasonry at the beginning. And it kind of chokes me up a little bit because he was a great friend of mine. He's no longer with us. But, he did something really special, and I was very privileged. And I'm here to tell you, brethren, the only reason I'm here today is because of Brother Hulse, Brother Lewis, and many others in my lodge who were great mentors to me early on, because they helped guide me about what this wonderful fraternity is all about. Brother Hulse would take me through my lessons. We'd spend 2 or 3 hours every Monday night. We only spent about 30 minutes working on the lesson. We spent the rest of the time actually talking about what the lesson meant, talking about what I went through, talking about Freemasonry, its rich history, and how much there was to gain out of it. That's how I became a Mason. And my brothers, they did my second degree. And then I had to wait a couple months for my third, because I think they were a little nervous about me learning lessons. But they said, we've got this building down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and that's where we know you're a history buff, so you'll love it, because that's where our Grand Lodge was formed. I thought, this will be wonderful. So with the carpool of brethren, drove down on a nice sunny early May day, went down to William Pitt Tavern, and was met by a barrage of Grand Lodge officers and lots of brethren who I didn't really had known to that point. And my lodge gave me the Master Mason degree, read my lesson, had the Master Mason degree. What a wonderful experience it was. We got up early in the morning because in the North Country, to get from Colebrook to Portsmouth, that's like a 4-hour drive. So we carpooled several cars down. We stopped for a quick breakfast on the way down, had lunch before the degree, had a nice afternoon degree, and then drove back up Route 60 and nice scenic route and all at an evening together. It was a very long day. We left early and probably didn't get home till 10, 11 o'clock at night. But, it reminded me of something very early on that's really going to be something I'm going to be talking about in a moment, about really what's important to me. Freemasonry is certainly something that we do behind tiled doors, but it's the friendships that we make. It's the brethren that we get to know who they are and what their background is, and really to find out how we become Freemasons and what this wonderful fraternity does. There are so many brethren out there I know that I've met throughout the jurisdiction that I would have never met in my passings. A few I may have, but most of them I probably would have never met, because if not for Freemasonry, our paths wouldn't have crossed. And I personally feel I'm a richer person because of it, because of all these friendships I've developed. What happened was I joined Freemasonry. I was in a small town. My dad was an insurance agent, owned a couple other businesses. I worked with him, got into the insurance business, really enjoyed it. But then about 23 years ago, back in 1998, a couple years after I was in the lodge, I had joined all the appendant bodies. I was active in all the bodies, but I needed a little break. I'm a young guy, and young guys, sometimes they look for bigger and better. I wanted to get down to Southern New Hampshire, work into bigger insurance accounts. So I did that, and I moved down to the Lakes region at the time, not knowing where I was going to get a job, and I ended up working out of the Manchester-Bedford area. And I worked for a wonderful agency down there and sold insurance. But what I was able to do was travel back up to the North Country. And after a few years break, I went back up there, and I actually started taking some time to go to my lodge meetings and just sitting on the sidelines. And you know what happens when you attend one too many lodge meetings, my brothers? Somebody comes over and says, hey, we'd like to know if you'd like to come back in the officer line and finish up. And I thought, okay. At the time, I had just met my wife. We were just dating, and I asked for a promise from her. I said, it's going to take me about 4 to 5 years. I want to go through as master of my lodge. I want that privilege. I don't expect it to go anywhere else. I truly did not at that point. And I said, can you just give me 5 years to travel back and forth? So I did, my brothers. What I did is I actually traveled from the Concord area to Colbert, New Hampshire on a regular basis. That's how I went to my lodge meetings. I would leave my office early and I'd drive up to Colbert, some 130 miles one way, and turn around and get back home by 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And, those were some long, lonely drives, but it got me to think a lot about Freemasonry, gave me time to work on my degree work, my ritual, about the programs I was doing, and try to make every time I was at a meeting worthwhile. And, Brother Flynn, I'll tell you, I can remember, as I'm sure you've seen yourself, I know we've talked, is that, there's those meetings you go to. When I went to a meeting in my lodge, when I had traveled a very tough wintry roads, took over 3.5 hours to get there. And my master was very pleased at the time when I was a senior warden to have a 30-minute lodge meeting, and we were done. And I looked at myself, thought to myself, I'm going to spend another 3 to 4 miserable hours driving back home because I wasn't staying up at that point. And you know what? What is Freemasonry really about? If this is all what it is, I'm done. I was ready. I really was ready to quit the office line. Not quit Masonry, but quit the office line. But I made a commitment to myself, and I said, it's important sometimes that we need to all step up to the plate and make it better. Instead of sit back and complain, make Freemasonry better. And the only way it starts is with you. You make the effort. So soon I was moving into the East earlier than I expected, was really not prepared for that. But what I was prepared for, I was very prepared to make sure that lodge every month for master, I was master 2 years, that I made sure there was a program at every meeting. I did the program. I would use a short talk bulletin. I talk about the independent bodies. I talk about some symbols in Freemasonry, the knowledge that I gathered, and I could feel comfortable talking about. And you know what? The meetings went well. A few more brethren showed up. Brethren would come to me and kind of surprised me. I didn't know why. That said, thank you very much for a great meeting. I'm like, yeah, I was very happy about that. I didn't realize the difference I was beginning to make in that lodge. And the difference I was beginning to make was I was starting to put Masonry back into the Masonic meetings, not even knowing it, not even realizing it. Well, what happens sometimes is when you do things, you get recognized. I was then brought into a district office. I worked my way up through the district offices. And then a good friend of mine, who's a past Grand Master now, Paul Leary, used to ride with me a lot. And we had a lot of conversations many miles up north. He'd come to a lot of meetings with me, and we traveled together. And he said, some 10 years ago now, I'd like to know if you'd be interested in going in the Grand Line. And you know what, brethren? It's been one of the greatest things I've ever chosen to do. It's a great internship we have in this jurisdiction. You get 10 years to work on learning about Freemasonry, improving yourself, getting to know the brethren, and starting certainly to put out a plan. So, brethren, for my own personal life, like I said, I got in insurance. I've been in insurance pretty much most of my career. I do it to this day, and I work for a large national organization that I handle Northern New England. So it's great. I still get to travel around, and certainly you'd be able to work and have a great schedule that I'm able to be a Freemason as well. When I looked on the things I wanted to look and really, really work on for the next 2 years, I've had a great predecessor. Most Worshipful Brother Ken Clay. Can't thank him enough for everything he's done. Who would have known? We were talking today. I had lunch with the Grand Master. We were talking today about COVID and how challenging COVID has been, and how really it put it put a 190-degree turn for the Grand Master and all the wonderful things he wanted to do in his second year as Grand Master. His pillars of retention, ritualistic excellence, Masonic education, and communication are certainly pillars that are very important to me as well. I've got a little bit of a tweak on it, but certainly the things he's doing, I'm not going to change that, brethren. Those are good things we need to work for as an organization and be better. So what I put together, brethren, is this. I put together what I call my term plan. And my term plan, the word term, has 4 letters. And let me talk briefly about what each of those 4 letters means and some of the things I've been working on and I'll be pushing out in the next year to 2 years as your Grand Master. The first one for T is travel. Remember I talked about driving down to Portsmouth when I was a newly raised Master Mason? I also went to a table lodge 1 week after I became an entered apprentice. And I'm going to tell you, brethren, it's the relationships we build in Freemasonry and the brethren we get to know and the social things we do going to a lodge meeting, not necessarily everything that happens in the lodge, is what makes us better. It also makes us better when we go to other lodges, see things lodges are doing, look at the wonderful programming they're doing, bring it back to our own lodge to make it better. Travel is critically important. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling around the jurisdiction. I'm going to be looking to work with other jurisdictions on having degree work exchanges. I would certainly like to do things. This year, we're not going to be able to do it, sadly, because of COVID. But for many of you may be aware, Golden Rule Lodge, which is right over the border in Quebec from Vermont, actually for 170 plus years has done a Master Mason degree on the top of a mountain. I wanted to go there this year. We're not going to be able to, but next year, my brothers, I'm here to tell you that I'm going to be going there, and I'm going to invite as many of you would like to come up. I'd like you to come with me. I'd like you to travel around the state. I'd like to enjoy this jurisdiction and really some of the great brethren you're going to meet around the state. I'll be looking at doing events. My brothers, at the semi-annual communication in the Grand Lodge, for my program, which I am tasked as Grand Master to do, we will be having our business meeting in the morning and conducting and taking care of our business. When we're done at noontime, we're going to break, and those brethren who would like to go home may. And the brethren who like to stay will have to buy a prepaid ticket. And we're going to have a table lodge at the Manchester Masonic Temple, and we're going to have a Grand Master's table lodge. I'll bring in a national speaker, and I would enjoy all of you to come with me. Come down, break bread, socialize, and enjoy what a table lodge is, a time to break bread with our brothers and get to know them better. And sit next to brothers you may not know as well, because it's traveling, it's those things, those events that we do is what make it better. So I'm certainly have a lot of plans. You hear a lot about my travel plans. I'll be sharing those with all of you as they come out. The second part of it, E for education. Education is who we are as Masons, brethren. You know, we had a past Grand Master that used to say, you know, if we don't have our ritual, then we're just the elks with aprons. Sorry to say anybody that's an elk, not being critical, but I just want to say education is who we are as Masons. That's what our foundings are. That's what the Grand Master has been doing. Our Grand Education Officer, our Deputy Grand Education Officer, you know, they just had a wonderful Fellowcraft workshop yesterday. They have seminars now for the Entered Apprentice Fellowcraft and Master Mason that are being developed over the last many years. There's things like leadership training, which again, with COVID, we're able to get one of them out. I'm scheduling those for the year. We've got a lot of great programming, a lot of great education that we want to do to bring in lodges. We're actually going to be working, and there's going to be some changes in the education committee. Good changes, my brothers. We're not eliminating anybody. We're looking to work with more brothers on the education committee so we have more presenters out there. So if your lodge needs somebody to talk about Prince Hall Masonry, we'll have a brother for you that can come out and talk about that. If you have a brother that you want to talk about the columns of Boaz and Jacob, you know, we can actually have somebody talk to you about that. Maybe you want to have somebody talk to you about the history of Freemasonry in New Hampshire. We have somebody that can talk to you about that. We want to be able to give you better programming and continue to improve that. So just like Grandmaster Clay worked on, we're going to be doing the same thing, working on education and improving it even more. Our ritual. Ritual is who we are, my brothers. You know, ritual is the foundation of who we are as Masons. Most certainly, our Grand Lecturer at Worshipful, Brother Chris Busby, had some wonderful plans, I'm here to tell you, last year that he wanted to roll out. He was able to do a little bit, but COVID really put a stopping to it. I'm looking forward to us getting out of COVID this coming year, and certainly Right Worshipful Brother Busby and his fellow Deputy Grand Lecturers will certainly be coming around the jurisdiction, doing some great programming on ways to improve the ritual in your lodge, and some things that you can do to make the candidates' experience better. And you know, that leads me to the last part of my term plan is M for membership. You know, membership, brethren, I'm here to say, as Masons, Freemasons in New Hampshire, we're a membership-based organization, and we need to look at our membership. You know, again, under Grandmaster Clay, the Scottish Rite program coming out at the Conference of Grandmasters in 2020, the Grandmaster and I met with the leadership of the Scottish Rite on their membership committees, and we started doing some things to get the word out and to see how we can better get the word out about Freemasonry, how we can work on membership. Certainly, my brothers, I'm not here to talk about that we should openly go out and solicit brethren. Brethren still need to come of their own free will and accord. But we can certainly put more of a public persona on the face of Freemasonry. You know, my brothers, the first thing I look at is, and I always ask, you know, the reason that most worshipful past Grand Master, C. Wayne Libby, actually started the open houses, because he knew lodges were not even, they were in communities, the communities didn't even know the lodge exists. We need to do a better job, brethren. And you wonder, what can we do? You know, if your community has things like an Old Home Day, a big 4th of July parade, maybe they have a Columbus Day parade, a Labor Day parade, like some lodges do, you need to take an active part in that. Maybe put together a float, and you're like, you know, floats take a lot of time. Let me share with you what a brother from my lodge does. My brother has a nice pickup with a skidoo trailer, and he has a beautiful square and compasses that he has. What does he do, my brothers? Every year at the 4th of July parade, he actually mounts it on back of his trailer. It's a little lightweight frame, drives down the main street in the 4th of July parade, and sometimes his wife, sometimes brethren, throw out candy to the kids on the street. The people in that community know. Other brethren in other communities march in parades in regalia. You can certainly do that, my brothers. There's so many things you can do to get your face in the community, but that's important that you've got to do that. You've got to get your face out in the community. And again, we'll be talking about ways you can do that. Low-key ways. I'm not looking for the lodge to go out and spend a ton of money to sponsor events that's going to be very costly to them. I'm looking to do some very low-impact ways that lodges can do that. We have a lot of great ideas. We're going to be sharing those with you. However, my brethren, most appropriately, if we're showing we're showing potential candidates an interest in Freemasonry, we also have to be able to basically to essentially deliver when they come to our lodges. So my brethren, I'm here to tell you that the first thing is we talked about programming meetings. We need to make our meetings more interesting. We can't have the same old stale business meetings. We talked about this one of the town halls. We bring brethren in. We have 3 wonderful meetings where those brothers come in. They are the most important part of the meeting. They come to the 4th meeting. It's a business meeting. There's no programming going on. Who wants to go to that? We also need to make an effort, brethren. We need to make a better effort about letting our brothers know about what we're doing in our lodges. If they don't know we're having a program, if they just see stated communication, what does that really mean to them? We all can do a better job on that, and we're going to work on that most certainly. We're also going to be providing with those potential candidates, the membership committee we're working on right now, getting a packet of material that you're going to be able to use and provide to those potential candidates. Good informational bulletins to help them understand what Freemasonry is all about. The other thing, my brothers, is we need to do a better job of mentoring. I know some wonderful mentors around this jurisdiction. And you know what? We're actually working together to put together some nice talking points and a packet so that lodges can understand what's going to make a good mentor. Now, we're not just going to give you the information. The education committee, the Grand Lodge officers, myself, the Grand Lodge line, as we travel around the state, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about how you can do better mentoring. Because again, if we bring these brothers through the door and we don't mentor them, how can we do it? My brothers, why I say that is when I did a little study here a couple of years ago, and I looked at how many candidates came into this jurisdiction. And we had nearly 2,000 candidates. It was a little bit shy of that come into this jurisdiction. We only raised 30% of them. So my brothers, I'm here to tell you from a sheer numbers point, I can tell you there's an issue. If the brethren that are knocking on our door and are asking to be Masons and we accept them, we should be informing them and working with them to help them come through the process. Now, certainly, there's always going to be those men that come in the door of Freemasonry, get to their first degree and realize it's not what they wanted. That's okay. However, how many others that maybe have a change in life like I even did myself? I made it through the 3 degrees. What had happened if I was kind of stuck at my fellow craft degree and my entered apprentice degree and I moved out of the community? Would I be a Mason today? I don't know. I think it takes mentorship. I think it takes a brother. I think it takes those signers and mentors in the lodge to reach out to those candidates and say, hey, love to work with you. We'd like to be working with you. What can we do to work with you to continue through so you can become a Mason? Then we have programs that'll keep them there. The other thing I talk about membership, brethren, is non-payment of dues. Dues are something we have. As you come in the fraternity, that's something we do. We're a member-based organization. How we fund our lodges and fund our Grand Lodge is through payment of dues. And I think it's important, brethren, there are those brethren that do leave. They get suspended for non-payment of dues. But I do believe that a certain percentage of them, often we lose touch with, lose communication with. And I believe that when they get suspended for non-payment of dues, I don't think we're doing a good enough job about looking back at those members who go non-payment of dues. So again, through the Grand Lodge, we're not going to be looking, brethren, to you do this alone. We're going to work with you. We're going to look at your membership rolls. We're going to look at those brethren, and we're going to work with you in ways and show you ways to reach out to those brothers and say, my brother, you were suspended from a few years. Do you even know you're suspended? You'll be surprised how many brothers we do get. I'm not saying it's thousands, but we do get brothers every year that come forward and say, I had no idea. I got divorced. I got in bad financial straits. I moved. I didn't get mail. I assumed I was still a Mason. As much as we know what it costs to be a Mason, some brothers simply don't look at it that way, and they consider themselves still a Mason. So I think there's things from the membership level we need to do. A couple things as well, brothers. So I'll go back. what are we going to do for membership? I'll go back to Brother Ryan Flynn's question. What would be the process of proposing a new fund, or at least a section of the existing funds, to be set aside to lodges to help them out of COVID? My brother, it's very simple. You simply need to put together, you can email it, is a great starting point, to the Grand Master, myself. I am certainly head of the charity committee. I am the incoming Grand Master. Love to hear what your proposal, what you'd really like to do. I guess what I'd really ask is, what are you looking for assistance from the lodges for programming? What is your end goal? What are you looking to do? What do you think, it needs to be? Our Grand Master really stood himself out this past year and brought COVID financial assistance to lodges. We've had lodges that have had certainly fundraisers that they haven't had. The Grand Lodge was able to help out with that and certainly help the lodges a little bit to move forward. We're certainly more than willing to work with all of our lodges. We know how hard COVID has impacted it. And most certainly, we'd be willing to have a conversation with you and see what we can do to help lodges. Because again, I think with myself, our current Grand Master, the Grand Lodge line, we're very open. We're very proud to be Freemasons. We want to see this fraternity be around for a lot more time. One last thing I want to touch upon, brethren, is that, I mentioned about how I started my career and I still am, firefighter, EMT, or first responder. And, I want to tell you, brethren, in the Masonic fraternity, we've done a wonderful job for really decades of recognizing those Masons who are military veterans, those brethren who have served the United States military with honor and distinction and really protected our country. And certainly, I want to continue to do that. But my brothers, I do believe that we also have a group of forgotten brethren. I grew up in a generation that we didn't join the military. The draft was over. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And by the time I was a young man and growing into an adult, the draft didn't exist anymore. My brother joined the military, had a very proud career in the military. And I'm very proud of the long career, the 30-plus year career he had. I didn't have a career in the military. I think he kind of made me a little afraid to go in the military. And I got in the fire service, and I did a lot with that. And my brothers, one thing I've realized in the fire service, the fire, the police, the EMS, I want to share with you something right now. If right now somebody starts pounding on your door with a weapon and tries to enter your house, who are you going to call? Are you going to call the military? No, you're going to call law enforcement. If your young child starts choking on something, who are you going to call? You're going to call 911. You're going to call to get an ambulance, to get emergency medical personnel there to help your child. If your wood stove catches the side of your house on fire, who are you going to call? You're going to call not Ghostbusters, brothers. You're going to call fire personnel. I want to recognize those. So what I've designed, brethren, is I have a special pin that I have that's going to recognize our military Masons and our first responders, because I believe they're very much in the same group. I believe they're really those men, those individuals that put themselves out, whether they've had a career or on a volunteer basis, and really work to protect us each and every day, whether it's on our international borders, within our country, or maybe just they're a neighbor down the street that's there when you call 911 to help you. So I want to do that, and you'll be seeing me do that, and I will be recognizing those brethren during my time as Grand Master with a special pin that I want to do, and I want to step it up a little bit. I think as well, you're going to be hearing a little bit more about one of our appendant bodies, so it's also going to be doing something to recognize our first responders as well later this year. Because my brothers, again, going back many years, what happened 20 years ago in September? 9/11. Very sad situation. And it was our first responders that put their life on the line on that event. And I certainly want to make sure we recognize them, but never forget our Masonic military veterans at the same time. So my brothers, that's who I am. That's what I do. I'm not here to set from this chair and sit there and dictate to you what to do. I'm here to go out there. I'm here to work with you, my brothers, and help you make this a better fraternity. It's going to take a lot of work of all of us. I'll be right there working along you. I'm not going to be sitting here telling you. I'm going to be working with you. However, brethren, I need you to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 steps forward. I need you to take 2 steps towards me, and let's work together to make this a better fraternity. I'm really looking forward. Our Grand Master Ken Clay, I can't say this enough. He has really led us through a situation with COVID that no other Grand Masters had to deal with in modern times. He's done a wonderful job. Many of these things I'm doing are simply things he wanted to continue to execute on the last year. He hasn't been able to. So I've taken his ideas and truly I'm running with them because they're wonderful. I've added my own little flavor to them, but brethren, understand, I love this fraternity. I think it's a great organization. I think we can grow. I think we can do a better job. But I know coming out of COVID, We're going to have to roll up our shirt sleeves. We're going to have to get down, and we're going to have to start working really hard, probably harder than many of us worked in many years. But you know what? We're right there with you. Myself, I know even Grandmaster Clay, even though he leaves office, he'll be working with a dependent body. That certainly he will be very much a part of that. So with that, I will ask if I've missed any questions, Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss, and I will end my talk.
Yeah, actually, I do not see any questions, Right Worshipful. A couple of just overall comments. A nice joking comment from Brother Ladd up in the North Country saying, "We take no responsibility for you."
Yeah.
As a member of Journeyman's Lodge number 1797. Apparently he was worshipful master of that lodge.
He was, and I have a photo to show that. Too bad I didn't have it readily accessible, but I will, Brother Ladd. So yes, no problem.
That's great. And Right Worshipful, thank you very much for the insight into who you are and some of the plans that you have. And I very much look forward to working with you and implementing those as we move forward and are installed in May. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brethren, that actually concludes our program for the evening, and seeing no other questions, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you again our Most Worshipful Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brother Kenneth Ansel Clay Jr. Most Worshipful, closing comments, please.
Thank you, Dan. Great job once again. Brethren, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Once again, it appears that we've got over 30 brethren who have dialed in to hear our message. Very much looking forward to seeing our brethren from the 8th District later this week. We're going to be going up north of the Notches, going up to Lancaster, where we're going to be treated to a fantastic meal, and I'm sure ice cream's on the on the menu. Brother Rich, I have all the confidence in the world that you are going to impress. But you're going to be hearing a program very similar to what we presented this evening, and I'm sure that the brethren of the North Country, I mean, effectively, Right Worshipful Collins is heading home. He's from originally the 8th District, so I am sure his members will be there in force to support him and this great advancement in his Masonic career. Brethren, I can't stress to you enough what a fantastic job everyone is doing. I know that there is concern as we start to come out of COVID. Lodges are opening up. Degrees are being performed. There's a concern that brethren aren't going to come back unless there's value. It's absolutely incumbent upon our worshipful masters to make sure that you are putting together programs that the brethren will say, wow, I am really glad that I came to Lodge this month. I'm going to come next month. And I'll tell you, a significant part of that is a part of my pillars. Retention is all about making sure that there is value in your Masonic experience. Ritualistic excellence. So Right Worshipful Brother Chris Busby, working with Right Worshipful Brother Tuttle, are doing a fantastic job of putting together programs that are going to help you to improve your ritualistic quality. EdCom, under the leadership of Right Worshipful Brother Ackridge and Right Worshipful Brother Wolf, as evidenced by yesterday's Fellowcraft workshop, these folks are really putting a lot of time and energy into making sure there are materials that help everyone to advance their personal Masonic knowledge at whatever pace they believe. And then certainly communication. Tools such as this tonight. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for my communications committee. Right Worshipful Brother Chris Busby, Right Worshipful Brother Scott Newberry, and Right Worshipful Brother Ryan Flynn have done an absolutely stellar job, coming up on 2 years now, in charge of the communications committee. And then you add to that the great work that Tim is doing with programs such as this evening. Really, really important that we get the message out to the brethren that Freemasonry is alive and well in New Hampshire. I believe we've got a brother once again this evening dialing in from Maine, and that's just evidence that we're doing some pretty darn good stuff here in New Hampshire. So brethren, I wish you please be safe. There is light ahead, but continue to wear your mask. Continue to wash your hands, practice social distancing. For goodness sakes, if you have an opportunity to get the vaccine, I would encourage you to do so, so that, brethren, as we go down the road in the months to come, we can return to some form of normalcy. I want to thank Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss for another fantastic job with the Q&A. I suspect there will be another Q&A in our future here in the not too distant future, so I would encourage you to look to that. Brethren, have a fantastic night. Enjoy the warm weather that we've waited so patiently for, and enjoy a return to normalcy with all the safety precautions that I have outlined this evening. Brother Hotchkiss, back to you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. Again, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. And we look forward to, as our Grand Master said, probably another Q&A upcoming in the next month or so. Good evening, brethren, and